so if you do have a vote, it would be great if that could be turned on. Yeah, so why now? Well, until last week, Scotland had a moratorium on fracking. That's to say that the government felt that before they could allow fracking to go ahead, they needed to know more about it. So they imposed a temporary ban while they did more research. Unfortunately, last week, despite our best efforts, believing fracking to be safe, the government lifted the ban. And a group of us who had become aware of at least 3 locations just in the vicinity of Inverness where licenses were being sold for fracking. And we felt like we couldn't just let that go ahead. We couldn't sit back. We had to do something about it. Decided it was time to act. Hence, we're all here today. So, David, if you get the lights, I'll put this video on. A method of, hold on, let me go to full screen. Fracking, verb, a method of gas extraction. A well is drilled first vertically into the ground and then outwards horizontally. The well is cased with cement and steel. A perforation gun shoots uranium charges through the horizontal casing of the well. Fracking fluid comprised of water, sand and chemicals, some carcinogenic, is forced into the well at high pressure, fracturing the shale rock. Sand props the fractures open and allows the gas to flow back out. The majority of the fracking fluid is removed from the well, either to be treated at a water treatment works, with the concentrated remains being released into a waterway, or it is removed from the well and re-injected into a disused conventional well. The fracking fluid remaining in the well can seep into the ground, seep into the water table. After all, nature's not a neatly drawn diagram. The story of fracking in Britain so far: Balcombe, West Sussex, April 2010. It has been announced today that West Sussex County Council have voted to grant Quadrilla the necessary planning permission to begin the fracking process. August 2013. Hey, Quadrilla, 2,000 people coming to get you, hashtag no fracking, hashtag march to Balcombe. And lastly, Chief Inspector, will the provision of community policing be affected by the fact that policing anti-fracking protests in Balcombe has cost West Sussex Police £3.7 million? September 2013. Victory? No. This is but one step along the long and winding road. Today, West Sussex County Council have failed to evict us. Nothing changes. We'll be staying. The camp is staying, and will continue our efforts to protect this land and all life it supports. For a good few years now, the fracking battle has been taking place here in Balcombe, and with Quadrilla's planning permission expiring today and no fracking ever having taken place, many will wonder if fracking will ever become truly mainstream. Ian Kiln, BBC News. Meanwhile, Lancashire, August 2010. We, Quadrilla, are proud to announce that we have commenced the drilling process at our Priest Hall site. April 2011. OMG, what just happened? Hashtag no fracking, hashtag Priest Hall, hashtag earthquake. May 2011. And next, drilling work has been suspended at the controversial Priest Hall fracking site by the Department for Energy and Climate Change following the second seismic event in 2 months. April 2012. Today, they admitted it. The Department for Energy and Climate Change report recognised that fracking caused pre-soil earth tremors. New guidelines for this industry aren't good enough. We'll keep on fighting for a frack-free UK. December 2013. Hallelujah! Today's the day. Quadrilla have left the building. Priest Hall closes. Hashtag no fracking. Hashtag Priest Hall. Hashtag frack-free lights. February 2014. The future is bright for Britain, but Britain will be reliant on oil and gas for decades into the future. We at Quadrilla believe that not only is fracking part of the future, but we are too, which is why we are here today near Blackpool to propose 2 new sites. The national picture, December 2012. And Mr. Speaker, may I state that it is my great pleasure to lift the temporary ban on fracking in the UK as part of our drive to reinstate industry in our bid to rebuild Britain as the strong, self-sustaining nation she once was. October 2013. I am proud to be a member of the European Parliament. The Parliament that just voted to include mandatory environmental impact assessments to be carried out for both the exploration and production phases of all unconventional fossil fuel projects. December 2013. HM Revenue and Customs outlines new tax breaks for onshore oil and gas. January 2015. Mr. Osborne, can you tell us, is the leak true? Did you write to colleagues requesting them to push progress on fracking? 28th of January 2015. And that is why we, the Scottish Government, feel that it is necessary to impose a moratorium on fracking. Now let's take a look at who will be facing the pressure over the next few months ahead. Hello. Thank you, Jane. Well, it will be a breezy start for most as we head towards the weekend. The picture in the far north remaining quite clear for the time being, although as we head south towards the central belt, we begin to see the first signs of the pressure that may over the next few months engulf entire regions below the border. This being as a result of 2 opposing fronts. The progressives, who are pushing for a renewable future and refusing to make way for industry, a key front in what is to become a rather familiar weather system. Middlesbrough and further down into Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire, however, is where we first encounter what has the possibility of becoming truly tumultuous conditions. The tense atmosphere is mirrored on the west of the country in Lancashire and Cheshire. Expect increased temperatures and humidity with the potential for thunder as fracking continues to make its way across the pond from America. Temperatures are expected to peak in Kirkby, Misperton, North Yorkshire and Preston New Road, Lancashire, while the emerging picture for Harrogate down to Burton-on-Trent is one of a corridor of calm, rather like the parting of the seas. The cooler temperatures continue as we head south into the Midlands, central England and Wales, with things remaining generally dry and mild. The outlook is somewhat patchy in the south, with licences scattered throughout the south of Wales, Forest of Dean, Wiltshire, Dorset, Hampshire, Sussex and Surrey. The heat is already noticeable in some of these counties, and with the current damp conditions, things could quickly spiral. Elsewhere, things will remain cooler, with a slight breeze and scattered showers throughout, capping off what could become a rather tense few months. When my daughter was 6, she asked me what the world will be like when she's 100. Now she's 14, and she still asks a lot of questions. The usual, expected ones, like, why can't she go to Becky's party? But she asks questions of other people too. And, well, let's just say, I'm really glad that we agree on 80% of things, because, well, you should see the way she deals with politicians. Despite what people say, I did not pour on to her the woes of the world. No, this was a path that we as a family decided to, at first, tentatively tread. She taught me to care, that to love your family you have to see beyond your white picket fence. To love your family you have to step out of your convenient, protective bubble. Take the burden and fight. Because when the pain is shared, it becomes light. It makes me angry. It makes me angry when someone says that my daughter shouldn't know, that she's too young. Because if being active and engaged is related to age, and at 56 it's too much hassle for them to change banks, and the government should do something about it, and they recycle. Isn't that enough? I mean, how old do we all have to get before we're old enough to take a stand? Like 503? As she gazes at the stars with her golden almond eyes, I see hope. Because she understands that doing something is better than doing nothing. The big things aren't scary if there's always something you can do about them. My daughter worries little, because she understands that she has the power to make a change. We first went on a demo 7 years ago. I was apprehensive, held on to my daughter's hand as tight as you hold the strings of a kite, certain that if I were to let go, she would be swept away by all those violent hooligans the media had so kindly warned me of. Society's shackles still hung loosely round my ankles, their ever-present weight a reminder to ignore the things that mattered to me. Turn your head, wear the blinkers, talk about Bake Off! 5 years on, having removed those shackles, I was free to find my place. Can we come left, please? Yep, that's great, just keep coming left. Can we come left, please? Yep, that's great, just keep coming. Sorry? The Green Party? Ah, well, they're over there beside the Lancashire Nanas. Can you see that placard? Yeah, that's them. I became a steward, and then I started organising the speakers. Pardon? What's that? Nearest toilets? Okay, so you want to, head round the corner, and the museum's on your right. And then one day, I found that it was me up there talking. And I wanted to show that the person standing up there, they're no different to all the people they're standing in front of. Hi, I don't want to talk about fracking. I've been talking about fracking for 5 years, but you know, there's a parallel story, and it's a story full of contrast. It's full of the contrast of the bitter, twisted lies we're told by our government through the media. It's full of the lies we're told by this industry and the false promises they make. The contrast with the beautiful, warm humanity we have when we find each other in these movements. And a contrast with the raw truth, the painful, emotional truth of people like George Bender, who took his life in Australia because he couldn't carry on the fight. He was a farmer, and when he'd lost his side of the pig and when his family had to move away, everything that he fought for all his life he had to sacrifice. And he couldn't do that. So one day, he took the poison, and within a second of doing so, he rushed his daughter and said, "I've done something very stupid." It was a moment of weakness. There are people across the world who are already living life in gas fields, who are already suffering the consequences and watching their children get sick. And it's those voices that we've heard. Because you can choose to read a report or listen to what the government tells you, but until you look someone in the eye who's actually living it, breathing it, that's where you find your truth. Good evening. Firstly, apologies. I'm aware we are starting a little later than planned. I've been having a few technical issues with the laptop, so we'll just have to go ahead without the graphics. Anyway, I'm Robin James, Head of Communication at Spark Energy, here tonight to put to bed any concerns you may have about our prospective plans. So, the truth about fracking. Safe. Fracking in Scotland is safe. Most of you will have heard the absurd comparisons made with other countries and situations, but that is precisely what they are. The regulatory regime in Scotland far surpasses that of any of the other countries or situations mentioned by scaremongers. There would be no opportunity for any issues to occur here. Thanks, Dave. So, just before we move on, I just wanted to mention a couple of things, slightly more in-depth stuff that wasn't included in the video. So, safety. A commonly made argument is that by implementing regulation, fracking becomes safe. But the fact is that no amount of regulation could ever make fracking safe, because injecting carcinogens and neurotoxins into the ground is an inherently dangerous procedure. With the problem of global warming, we need to start decarbonising our energy systems. Shale gas is a great transition fuel, cleaner than coal or oil and far more reliable than renewables. It bridges the gap perfectly. Britain is part of the Paris Climate Agreement, an agreement to limit emissions in order to keep temperature increases below 2 degrees. But that already leaves us with unburnable reserves of fossil fuels. That's to say, we already know about more fossil fuels than can be burnt whilst keeping warming below 2 degrees. So why then are we looking for more? Well, because gas is greener, it's a transition fuel, they tell us. No, it's not. If you add up all the leaks of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, throughout the entire production process, burning fracked gas is worse than burning coal. Far from being a green transition fuel, fracking would lock us into a high carbon economy for decades to come. Moving on from the societal level to an individual level, what will fracking do for you? Simples. Employment. Fracking will be the industry to bring sleeping Britain back to life. A fracking boom could provide upwards of 30,000 jobs, well-paid jobs that will in turn help to stimulate the economy. For starters, nobody knows how many jobs would be created by fracking. Industry estimates range from 5,000 to 75,000 jobs. And then who gets these? For fracking to be economically viable, huge numbers of wells need to be drilled and fracked. And I can tell you now, they aren't going to train up new people in each new place they decide to sweep through. No, the well-paid jobs, they go to those already in the oil and gas industry. Local jobs would be in a support capacity, providing the frackers with food and a place to lay their head. And how long would these last for? Because the industry expects peak production to last a decade at most. And then, would there even be net creation of jobs? Would more jobs be created than lost? In Queensland, Australia, the government estimated that for every fracking job created, 18 agricultural jobs were lost. In its current situation, Britain has become a hostage to the whims of others. Let us not say, I surrender. Let us be strong and rise again once more to stand on our own 2 feet. By producing our own gas, we take back control and ensure our energy security. And by relying on domestically produced gas over that which is imported, gas prices will plummet, and no one need face the dilemma to heat or eat. They argue as if we believe every syllable that falls from their lips, when the fact is, we know. We know what they're saying is a load of rubbish. Gas prices won't fall if we frack, because gas produced in Britain is sold on the European market. So it's sold, and us choosing to buy it back is no different from us choosing to buy any other gas. The only way it could be cheaper is if it was reserved for us, and only us. Yet when questioned, nobody in the industry has ever said this would be the case. And if it's not reserved, then how can it be cheaper? So moving on, I thought we could break out into discussion groups, because the next job for us as a local group is to pass this information on to the wider community. And I thought it would be, that job would be a whole lot easier if we'd identified the most important information. So if you can just think about, when you first found out about fracking, what was that one question you had, that piece of information you wanted to know? So I think it's groups of 3 and 4. This parallel story is our story. I used to, when we were first giving talks, I used to leave after everyone and feel so awful. I called it the unwelcome gift of truth. Because when you found out about fracking and the risks it can pose, how did you unknow that? You can't unknow this. And then every exit door has your child or your grandchild's face on it that says, you're going to walk away from this? Because you're not just walking away from the legacy of the toxic waste or the risks of seismic activity or the fact that we know we're not stupid. We know that none of these companies is coming back in 10, 20, 30 years later to check the integrity of what they left behind. And they say they leave it as they found it. No, they didn't. There's a hole. There's a whopping great hole, and they filled it with cement that will deteriorate over time, and the steel will perish. And then what happens to the waste that was left under there? Who deals with that when it comes up into your groundwater and your agriculture and your aquifers? But we don't just leave our children that if we do not succeed in keeping Britain frack-free. We leave them a legacy that says, this is not a democracy. Your voice doesn't count. And the fight that we've had for the last 5 years, that even though you think it's been tireless, no, it's been bloody exhausting the last 5 years. And that means we leave them this fight, but twice as hard, because they won, and we cannot let that happen. We cannot, because it's not just this, and with this unwelcome truth that we find, it's the awareness that our government believes that this gamble is a gamble worth taking. So what? If you give birth to a child prematurely, and there's a risk to its life, maybe they balance that against what it could do for our economy. But not one of us here lives in an economy. We live in a family, a community, a society. We live in neighborhoods. Okay, thanks Helen for reading that. Is everyone cool with that? Next Monday, 6 p.m. for the storm. There was some really good discussion going on there, some really interesting thoughts, ideas, proposals to mull over. And yeah, so just before everyone goes away, I just had a couple of things I wanted to mention, because while we know that the next few months will be long and hard, something to remember up here is that fracking has no social license. At the last government survey, opposition to fracking had increased to 33%, whilst support had decreased to 18%. Social license is the level of public approval a procedure or company has. It has nothing to do with what legal requirements or what regulation says can or should go ahead. Instead, it is concerned with what should morally be able to occur or exist. Granted by the people, and only by the people, no state or government ever has the power to do so, because nothing is ever actually granted or signed, but it's made apparent through the actions of the people. So a company may officially only need a license granted by the state. But the fact is that government structures can ignore the will of the people, which is what they seem to be doing. North Yorkshire County Council's Planning Committee voted to approve Third Energy's application to frack, against the wishes of Rydale District Council, every Rydale Town Council, 15 Rydale Parish Councils, the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, the Castle Howard Estate, and Flamingo Land. The Planning Committee received 4,375 letters of objection. They only received 36 letters in favour. So 99.2% of people said no. And yet the Planning Committee said yes. If we decide that fracking isn't something we want, then we need to remember that the power we have is over the granting of a social licence. Because by writing to MPs, signing petitions, taking our money out of banks and pension funds invested in fracking, organising visible events, everything from marches to coffee mornings, setting up protection camps, walking slowly in front of lorries that deliver equipment, and by challenging it at every stage possible in the courts, we can make it incredibly difficult and eventually impossible for these companies to operate. And sometimes us, our wee group, we might feel quite lonely, but it's important to remember that we may only be one bird, but we are not one bird in an empty sky. There are over 500 anti-fracking groups across Britain, resisting and saying no. And together, we form a murmuration of birds. And when the fracking industry comes up against us, they don't like it. They don't like it because they can't pick out a leader. The fracking industry works on and understands hierarchy. And when faced with something as fluid as us, they don't know how to respond. I'm being persecuted by this industry, but it could easily be you. And it isn't heroic. It isn't heroic at all. I think, like, everybody here, we're not in this out of choice. We're in this out of obligation to our children and their children. I was with one of the very early groups, Residents' Action on Filed Fracking, who amongst others were some of the early alerts for this country. And I remember in 2012 we gave evidence to the House of Lords, and I remember Lord Lawson said to me, "What would it take, Tina, to make you stop?" And I was like, well, is this why we're here? To find out how to stop a movement growing, not to find out, is this industry safe and good for our children and our communities and our futures? For all the beauty and the solidarity and the minor miracles we find along the way as we find ourselves activists when most of us never imagined this would be our lives, and when you find these unwelcome truths and your government is willing to take these chances with you, there is a beauty in the person standing next to you that gives a damn. And how often, before you were an activist, and we all weren't one once, did you stand next to someone who you were certain gave a damn, who got off their ass and got out on the streets and made a difference? Because that's what everyone in this movement does. Okay, we will stand. We will stand because if we don't, fracking wells will spread like a rash across this land until this land is neither yours or mine. You see the headlines in newspapers. Anti-fracking protesters cause disruption in UK cities. Anti-fracking protest turns violent. But they've made a mistake. It's not us who protest. We are not the protesters. We are the protectors. Protecting with dignity and grace what we not only rely on, but what we know to be our rights. We not have rights that say that the air we breathe in should be clean. Same for the water we drink, free of pollution and contaminants. It's they, the government, and companies wishing to frack who are protesters, protesting against our vital needs, because fracking involves injecting carcinogens, neurotoxins, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and plastics into the ground. The only thing stopping them migrating into the water supply is the steel and cement well casings. Yet, industry figures put well casing failure rates at 6% immediately upon drilling, and 50% over 30 years. No amount of regulation could ever make fracking safe. We won't be bought off with money. Money may be the language they speak, but protection is ours. Because money may be able to buy you many things in this country, but one thing it can't do is give you the ability to breathe poisoned air without damage. As I've said already tonight, we know that the road ahead will be long and hard, but as we've already seen, when we stand together, we cannot be ignored. When we come together, we see the truth prevail. And one day together, we'll see victory for anti-fracking. A frack-free world!
Perform for you, but I am here for a couple of reasons. Just a show of hands, if I can, if you guys are into that. If you guys can throw up your hand if you knew what fracking was before walking in, show me. So some, but not all. How many of you guys now feel like you know a little bit about fracking and maybe have been moved by the performance that you just watched? Yeah? Cool, that's exactly what we like to see. I don't think I want to talk about fracking. I've been talking about fracking for 5 months and I don't want to do it anymore. I think you guys just got an earful of statistics. What I do want to talk about though is the fact that you've just watched that entire performance written, edited, performed, directed by a 17-year-old. The 12th one or 11th?
I'm not sure.
One of the two. But we've done a lot of performances over the last 2 months. I guess we've actually been traveling and performing. And at every one of them, it's different people who know different things and have worked in different capacities with fracking. But every single time, I think people come out of it feeling like they know some truth. And I think what's really unique about standing up with Edie is that she's not up here playing. She plays a lot of characters. But she's not up here playing a role, she's up here telling her truth, and something that moves her, and something that's moved her to spend the last 6 months of her life writing a play, directing a play, performing a play about fracking, which is a very technical oil and gas extraction technique, not generally the most sexy thing to perform about. But overall, at every one of our performances, we've had between 20 and 40 people sitting in the seats just the way you guys are. And at every single performance, these people sign postcards that are in those envelopes in your hands. And with that, we will be delivering a massive message to the Scottish government. So when Edie was explaining at the beginning of the performance that there are, I guess, places around Inverness that have been sold for fracking licenses and that this temporary ban has been lifted, that is not true. Everything else in there was. But so overall, fracking has taken place all over the world. It's been happening for over 50 years, especially in North America, where I come from. It's been super damaging to a lot of people, to a lot of places. And at one point, it did make sense for people when oil and gas prices were high, renewables were too expensive to implement en masse, and when we didn't know the damage that it does to people and places. But now we do know all of those things. And we have the advantage, especially here in Scotland, a massive opportunity, because for the first time ever, your government is asking you how you feel about fracking. From January 31st until May 31st, they've opened a public consultation. So they are allowing people, the Scottish public, the British public, to actually give their opinions, to send in, whether it be a postcard or a more lengthy response, it doesn't matter. But they are looking for people to stand up and tell them how they feel. By the end of this year, the Scottish government is hoping to make a proposal to Westminster to actually ban fracking at a planning level, if that is what they so choose to do. So we have a huge opportunity for the next 7 days to get as many people as possible to actually fill in this consultation, to speak out, to stand up and tell them that this is not the future that we want in Scotland, that we've already started on a really, really beautiful road here in Scotland toward implementing renewables en masse and have done a wicked job of it. So we are hoping that you all will help us because of what Edie has done today and because of the opportunity that the government has given you. There are some things in these envelopes. Obviously, you have all picked up on what I was putting down here. Signing those postcards is the first step. That is the easiest way that you could possibly send a message to the Scottish government. But you'll notice that there's not just one, but there are 2 identical postcards in there. We are hoping that you will take that second postcard in the next 7 days, preferably in like the next 3, because we're hoping that they get to the Scottish government by May 31st. But if you can have this conversation with somebody, if you can share the leaflets that are in there with somebody, explain to somebody the very basics of fracking, that this is, even just about the play that you just saw. If you can have one more conversation with somebody, that's almost 40 more people that we will have responding to that public consultation. Share it with a parent, a friend, it doesn't matter, a teacher, anybody that you feel might be involved, engaged, or might want to be involved or engaged. Have that chat with them, ask them if they'll fill it in. It's already got postage paid on it. Legitimately, all you have to do is stuff it in a mailbox. It will get there. And the one that you have filled out today, you can absolutely just slip that back inside the envelope with the pen. Please do take all the other materials if you think that you would use them. If you want to pass them on, learn more, all of that. Like I said, this public consultation does close on May 31st, so officially that is the last time that the Scottish Government will be accepting these public responses or counting them, so to say. But like he was saying, it's not just about the planning permissions and the sales of these plots of land. What it's about is the social license behind it. So if people are learning more and talking about it and standing up against fracking, this is actually something that we could ban here, which would be monumental. And coming from somebody who's seen what fracking does to a country without ever having the opportunity to stand up to it beforehand, please do learn more about it, speak to more people, and share what you've learned today. With that, I would obviously just like to thank all of you guys for being here, being patient with us. I understand, like I said, not the sexiest topic, but I hope that Edie's performance of that extra sexy topic has really made an impact on me. Thank you so much for having us. This is a wonderful space. You guys have a really great thing going on here, and thank you guys for filming as well. It's been massive for us. So if you guys want to, if you are moved by that and think that maybe you might want to have more than one conversation with people about fracking, there's a whole stack of postcards up here. If you have even 3 more friends that you think might sign them, please do, grab a handful. Like I said, these have to be there by May 31st, but if you can talk to a couple of people today, that would be massive. There's also more of those briefings, like the leaflets that have tons more information in them, so if you want to actually teach people about this and have a more in-depth conversation, those are there for you as well. We've got badges as well, if you want to take those. They say ban fracking now, and I'll tell you they are a really great conversation starter, and that's part of that social license where even after this consultation, if people are still seeing that people are standing up against this, people might want to learn more, they might want to get more involved. The last thing is that we also do, so Edie has been performing on other topics as well. She's done lots of other stuff that had to do with CETA and TTIP, major free trade agreements around the world, and hopefully this will be the last time that you see me performing about these types of topics. You have a Facebook page, very informal but still. If you appreciated what you saw today, please do find us on Facebook. They're just a little @ is printed out on here. Like it, share it, comment on it, review it, whatever you need to do. It would be massively important.